Hello and welcome to episode 351 of AvTalk, our retrospective episode as we get ready to come back fresh next week. We begin 2026 by looking back at some of our favorite conversations from 2025. In 2025, we focused a lot on the news and what it meant for the aviation industry, but we also had a chance to speak with some very interesting people. We first revisit our conversation with Eliska Hill, Senior Vice President for Cargo at Air Partner. We chatted about her career path, how the cargo market has evolved post-COVID, and some of the more interesting shipments she's had to deal with. Welcome back. We, as promised, are here with Eliska Hill, who is the Senior Vice President of Cargo for UK and the rest of the world. I love that title. At Air Partner, which is a wheels up company, here to talk all things air cargo that we might not have covered before. So, Eliska, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, for having me here. It's a great pleasure.
So tell us about your role specifically in the industry, because you are not a giant aircraft with a logo splashed on the side, but you're moving things around the UK and the rest of the world quite handedly. So tell me about how you guys operate.
Well, certainly. The reason of the title is simply I look after every region apart from the United States. So I have a counterpart based in the US. So that explains why the title states that, not just that it's the UK is the centre of the world, which I get reminded that we're not, certainly not anymore. But yes, Air Partner obviously is a well-established for over 60 years as an air charter broker and quite a well-known name in the industry, but covering everything from private jet charters to group passenger charters, a lot of operational management, leasing, aircraft leasing, and cargo. And cargo's been an important part of the business for well over 30 years now, but always operating in across all the different verticals that we look at, mainly focused on the charter world and growing with locations across the globe. So it's been a standard charter business for many, many years. And what we've seen, I joined the company almost a year ago, back in October, and quickly identified that there was some huge opportunities for us here. And what had happened as the pandemic was slowing down, we were coming out, and obviously Air Partner was significantly involved during the pandemic with a number of cargo charters. But however, as the business has changed and evolved throughout that time, they identified that this is the team in the UK predominantly here has been driving this change of direction. Identified as the passenger flights were coming back on board, and a lot of carriers were looking to keep aircraft running. They didn't have new orders, but they needed to grow and fulfill and expand their routings to get the passenger numbers back up. They were utilizing older aircraft that had been bought out of retirement. So finding some struggles with the supply chains, getting back to perhaps previous levels before the pandemic. And became an opportunity here where there's some of their partners, which have generally been the freight forwarders, the large freight forwarders that will have an aerospace team to support them, whether it's any parts moving around, which could be for maintenance or any urgent requirements, were perhaps diverted away or not focused or struggling to offer them some of the services that they needed. And I think it was an opportunity here to step in and perhaps capture some of this market and head in a new direction. So pivoting away a little bit on the reliance on charter broking across all the different verticals, as I mentioned, and move into something that's a little bit more niche, a little bit more focused, and that's really time-critical service solutions and moving into the freight forwarding arena, but bringing that charter broking mindset with it. So that's really thinking about the solution that could be right for the customer, understanding the business, their requirements, what really are their needs, what's the time frame the piece is needed in, is it for regular maintenance, is it returning or moving a borrowed piece that's needed, and really creating a bespoke solution for that customer and making it really a partnership. And that's one of the things that's become really important and certainly has been for me in the business, is that working as a partner with our customers rather than with just a service provider So really has been creating this portfolio of time-critical solutions covering everything from an onboard courier solution, a next flight out, NFO, moving it on scheduled services, a direct drive, moving it by road, not necessarily by air, up to a part or a full charter. And of course, it's not just one of these modes. It could be a combination of 2 or even 3 different types of modes. And this business has just grown significantly, certainly in the last couple of years. And I've watched and I see there's a huge opportunity to take it further.
Why do you think it's grown so much in the past few years? I mean, all of these different pieces aren't necessarily new, but is it you're putting them all together that is drawing in demand, or is there something else driving this?
It's about the level of service that's given. And again, we're working in a very niche area. We're working mainly with global international passenger carriers that have large fleets operating wide networks and have to be operating on tight schedules, turnarounds, etc., and maintenance times. And as I said before, a lot of the customers that we're dealing with, they're unhappy with their current solutions and current services. They feel as if they're just another number. There's no priority. They don't feel anybody understands what exactly is the need. And also somebody is just simply booking it on another flight. As a freight forwarder, they'll just book it next flight out without understanding that it may not need NFO. It could move with an onboard courier and save a lot of money, or they'll have to go to their charter desk and get a charter option, which could take time and obviously cost a lot of money and may not be needed. So they're not really getting that. And I'm talking about bringing that charter broker mindset where we find solutions. It's that having that solution-based mindset overall, which has always been a critical part of the charter broker, of finding the fastest, the most cost-effective way to move something. Bringing that mindset into play here, where perhaps somebody's working as part of a freight forwarding team that's just booking boxes and boxes on a day-to-day basis and doesn't treat this perhaps as a really important shipment or really understand about the piece they're moving or what the customer's needs actually are. So it's becoming that bespoke partner really in the relationship. And really, we like to call it providing a white glove service to our customers, which is something that's, when you're talking about engine parts and oil and landing gear is not really what you would think about, but it's possible and it can be done. And with what the UK team has done, they've been incredibly successful at this.
So you've mentioned aerospace components a few times. Is that your main customer base? Are you really just making sure that the aerospace industry can continue to function?
I think it's been the area that's grown the most, and that's particularly in the UK, because of building that relationship with the carriers. And then they're moving every single day. They've always got aircraft in maintenance. So I'm talking about the larger carriers here. And a lot of it is general maintenance. And they could have borrowed a part for somebody, or they need a part moving to somebody else. Or it could be an aircraft is having some technical issues en route. So the aerospace has become the primary, and I think that's more for the UK because that's where the greatest opportunity is. I think, again, going back to saying post the pandemic, so many carriers were scrambling to get the passenger aircraft back in the air. And as I understand now, that belly hold capacity is actually now back to where we were pre-pandemic, which is pretty amazing achievement in the last couple of years, bearing in mind what the airlines have had to deal with. So we can understand then the pressure is on to capture the customer market. People are traveling again. Not necessarily just for business, although we can see that now, certainly with the number of cargo conferences that we have that are coming up this year. People are traveling again and people want to visit family. So the demand is there. So aerospace has been the predominant area that we've grown in. We've also done a little bit of work in the maritime industry, but that probably need, again, a little more of a dedicated team, because it's really about going into more detail about the actual parts. We're not just talking engines here. We're talking an inlet cowl. We're talking landing gear. It could be quite different pieces of equipment, key equipment that we're having to move, and having an understanding of how that's got to be handled and what aircraft can we utilize that to move it. So it's been there's a little bit of automotive. A team in Germany, obviously traditionally always been very strong in the automotive world, and they continue to focus on that arena. Obviously that's struggling at the moment, but the aerospace side of it is just growing. It really is. And the events that the team have been to is just phenomenal. The opportunity is huge.
So say I'm an airline and I've had a 777 go tech and I need a new engine so I can get that airplane back in the air. Do I just pick up the phone and say, "Hi, my plane's broken. Can you bring me my new engine?" How does that process work?
Yeah, so this will be handled by the technical department. So if there's a problem with an aircraft and it's down route, not on any home base where they may have a maintenance section, but their technical team, and every airline has an AOG desk. So this will probably be managed by them, which is 24/7. They will come directly through to our 24/7 desk where we run multiple shifts and make contact with the team member there. They'll need to specify, obviously, the details, the dimensions, the type of engine, how it's being moved, and what the requirements are. What's the time frame? The most important thing, if it is AOG, it needs to move as soon as possible. Do we have, does it need a charter? Whereabouts, obviously, it needs to be moved to, and how's it going to get there? Because obviously, if you're moving it by road at any point to an airport, you need an air ride suspension vehicle that can carry the engine without damaging this. These are obviously worth millions of dollars. So it's finding the right solution, but getting as much information as possible. And then, of course, if you're bringing an engine down, you're more likely going to have to take an engine back, which is not going to be so urgently need to be moved. So that can probably be moved on a scheduled service, taking a few more days to come back. And then it's, again, covering all the documentation, the customs paperwork, making sure somebody's there with the correct vehicle to carry that engine out to the aircraft where it may be located. So it's a number of different factors involved, but it really is that simple. But it's the technical people talking to our teams who are used to handling this equipment and understanding some of the challenges.
It sounds like your business and the aviation industry in general, because we've talked about AOG aircraft and you mentioned borrowing parts because we see all the time, that engine cowling, that doesn't match. That's clearly from another airline that you borrowed because you needed it. And it sounds like in your business, relationships are extremely important. I mean, because knowing who to contact in certain locations for an air ride suspension vehicle or somebody who has the right crane to lift something. How does that all come about? I mean, is that just over years and years and years, or is that something where you're relying on other companies as well to build that network?
Exactly. Relationship is critical, and all the different vendors that we use are a really important part of our business. They are the core. And obviously, a lot of those relationships have been built up through many, many years because as charter brokers, a lot of these are people, trucking companies, handling agents. These are people customs agents that the team have used for many, many years. So there are very strong relationships. And they've also been vetted. And that's something that's really important to us is the level of service that we provide. That's clearly reflective of all of our vendors to our customers are reflective of our level of service. So it's important that the vendors we use are trustworthy, are known, are experienced, and are vetted clearly. And if there are any issues, then they are dealt with very, very quickly. We've had it before where I think we had a new customer come on board. There were going to be somewhere like 8 different vendors used on the processes that they require just for general maintenance movements. So a visit will be made to each of those 8 vendors to ensure that they have all the procedures correctly and they're following all of those procedures. And if anything happens or anything goes wrong, then immediately somebody will be there to make sure this can be rectified, because this is really, really important to us. And all of those vendors, as I said, again, are critical to us to keep up those service levels to our customers.
So we've talked about aircraft on the ground. We've talked about parts and things like that. Now I'm curious about some of the more interesting or unusual things that you've been involved in, getting things from A to B to maybe C.
Unusual things? Well, we had one that came in, and it's not just aerospace. And this is where it's really interesting to talk about how we're developing outside of that. There was a recent example a few months ago. A Formula One race car was at a very important race in Europe. And on the practice sessions, unfortunately, had a small little accident and ripped off the rear paneling at the bottom of the car. Obviously quite vital, bear in mind the race is the next day.
Right.
So an urgent call went out to our UK team to move this. And while some people would say, fine, it's Europe, let's just throw a charter at it and, they can afford to pay. That's not how we would think. It's really about how can we get that part to the customer as quickly as possible, in sometimes almost quicker. If you're having to wait for a charter to get an aircraft operator to get permits, to get availability, et cetera, that can take time. So we may arrange the direct drive. So a truck picked up the part from their home base in the UK and drove it over to Belgium. And then we put it on a charter flight straight down to the nearest airport. And then it was delivered to the racetrack. And that was so fast, so quick. They literally had it there within a few hours. And the customer was incredibly happy. And obviously the panel was installed and the car went on. And I can't say if they won or not, but they were very, very happy.
But they were able to race.
They were able to race. And you can imagine if a Formula One car can't race, that's a huge issue and can cost that team a fortune. But we've moved, and outside of other areas, outside of the aircraft parts, the onboard courier side, and this is where we're looking to really expand and develop, particularly in the US, with our partner Wheels Up, is how can we connect in with some of the Wheels Up customers and work more closely together with some of their needs and requirements they may have. You've often got cases where people have left baggage behind, they've left a passport behind, urgent medication that needs to be picked up and taken to somebody. And we've had a case where somebody had a handmade suit that was being made by a tailor's in New York, had to be sent to Switzerland for an urgent requirement. It was actually for a funeral of somebody quite significant. And again, an onboard courier was able to deliver that very, very quickly and efficiently directly to that customer. And they know that the item will be in someone's care all the way through. So it's about finding that best solution, and that's often going to be the quickest, but also not just going for the most expensive option. It really is, because again, it's a longer term view. We want to work with our customers for a long term, and they've got to trust us. If we're moving $1 million engines around, they need to know that they trust the people that are managing these operations to do this properly.
Looking to the future a bit, as far as you want to look, how do you see the industry evolving, or at least your particular bit of the industry? What's on the near horizon and what's out a little bit more long term?
Well, that's where it's really exciting, actually. And that's where, as I said, I've only talked a lot about the UK today, but the idea for me and the strategy that I'm working on is the opportunity here is huge. And we're already now expanding and recruiting to have an office. Air Partner has a presence in the Middle East, based in Dubai. I myself was based out in Dubai for 18 years. So I know the region and the area very well. And it's a critical nerve center covering the Middle East, covering Africa. And so what we're setting up now is what we're looking to do is we have a control tower, we call it control tower in the UK, which runs 24/7 with the team there with a huge support. We'll look to build that similar model in Dubai, in the Middle East, to cover the regional aspect. Again, we already have a team that we're building in the US, which is based down in the Wheels Up MOC in Atlanta. And we're going to build up that team further as well to cover the Americas. And then, of course, we're looking into the Far East to have a control tower based here. So effectively, you'll have 4 control towers, all 24/7. And as we call the concept, we follow the sun. So customers will know they'll have that support, whatever's happening any time of day, and in a location close to them, either where they're based or where the incident or issue has occurred. So they'll have that global support. And through those 4 control towers, you'll be able to effectively connect with the world and connect the world together.
We've been speaking with Eliska Hill, who's the Senior Vice President of Cargo for the UK and the rest of the world, which means just not the US, at Air Partner. It has been wonderful to talk to you and get some insight into how things are moving around the world a bit unseen. So thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you very much for having me. It was fantastic.
Next, we're looking back on our interview with Catherine Maloney, pilot and founder of Elevate Her Aviation, an organization dedicated to raising the percentage of women in aviation careers around the world. Elevate Her's research has led to some obvious immediate changes that would be beneficial to the industry overall, and others that offer a more sustainable path to growing the number of women joining and staying in aviation. Welcome back. We are now joined by Catherine Maloney, who is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation. She is also a private pilot of both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, so all around. Catherine, welcome so much to AvTalk. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So you, as I like to call them, you fly the devil's bird as well as fixed wing. Which one did you get started on, and how did you become interested in aviation and then become a pilot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did it probably, as most people think, the wrong way around. So I actually started with helicopters and then went to fixed wing a little bit later on. But I actually had no intention of being in aviation, and certainly being a pilot was not on my radar until I was about 18. So when I was at school, I probably would have been voted least likely to be a pilot, I think, out of everyone. Certainly, I hadn't thought of aviation really as a career path for me, which actually is quite funny now looking back, because when I was at school, we actually did quite extensive aptitude testing. And my aptitude test actually came back and suggested I should apply to the RAF as a pilot. And I took that piece of paper and I literally threw it in a bin. I just thought, that's not me. I could never be that person. I could never do that. So it was quite an interesting kind of reflection for me looking back now to see that maybe I did have the aptitude from the start, but just didn't think it could be for me. So anyway, I left school. I went straight to work. I always wanted to go straight to work. I didn't go to uni. And I started working in the warehouse of a flight equipment company, picking and packing parcels, just as a bit of Christmas cover, to be honest. And this is really where my interest in aviation was completely piqued, because I was handling all of these different items every day, learning about aviation, learning about the industry, and I became really curious about flying. I was working on the airport, Shoreham Airport in the UK, and I went to my dad and I said, I'm kind of curious about this. I would like to give it a go. And he said, well, just get a trial lesson. See if you like it. There's no pressure, just give it a try. So that's exactly what I did. When the flight school's next door was a helicopter flight school, I literally walked next door and said, hey, can I have a trial lesson? And they took me up. And from that first moment that I touched the controls, I was absolutely hooked. I loved it. I thought, why have I never thought about this before? It just was so exciting. It felt like freedom. It felt like everything I kind of missed, to be honest. So yeah, that's really where I got the bug, let's say. So I was 18 then, immediately signed up to do my PPL, my private pilot's license, and got that at 19. And I can continue to work at the same company, lots of different roles, from shows, marketing, sales, trade sales, and ended up being marketing director there as well, and learned so much about the industry during that time, and also became a Department for Transport aviation ambassador as well during that time. And yeah, then I latterly went on to do fixed wing, and my thinking behind this was really, I love the industry. General aviation is my absolute passion, and I really wanted to explore as much as I possibly could, and I could see all of the amazing things you can do with fixed wing aircraft, from gliding to microlights to tail draggers to aerobatics, and I really wanted to give it a go. So I did the same thing, walked to a flight school, got a trial lesson, and yeah, was absolutely hooked again.
And you've been flying for a few years, and then you say to yourself, I want other people to experience this, and especially young women to get involved in aviation. So you founded Elevate Her Aviation. And so tell me about the process of getting that started. Where did the idea for that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. And, during the whole time of my flight training, so during both licenses, I never met any other women in aviation. And this is not to detract from the incredible male instructors and mentors that I've had throughout my whole career, because they've been absolutely phenomenal. And, my dad's probably my biggest mentor and has been my biggest support, throughout my whole career. But I did want to connect with other like-minded women, and I did feel like I was maybe missing out on that. So after I got my fixed wing PPL, it literally was like 2 months after, I decided to host an event. So what I did was hired out a room at Shoreham Airport, or Brighton City Airport as it's now known, got a plate of sandwiches and put out an open invitation to as many women in the industry as I could find in all different careers, and said, look, just come, have a laugh, have some fun, and we can all talk. So I was very nervous, to be honest with you. I didn't know who would turn up or if anyone would, but I was absolutely delighted that day when we had 40 women attend. And the event was just wonderful. The atmosphere was electric. All of us were sharing, talking about different parts of the industry, sharing our stories. And I really came away from that event feeling so inspired by the women that I'd met and thought, hey, this could be a real thing here. Another thing that I'd noticed in the industry was that it's very hard to find good information. There's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of amazing cadet schemes. There's a lot of amazing scholarships, but that you really do have to dig through the internet to find them a lot of the time. So I also thought it'd be great to have a bit of a one-stop shop for lots of aviation knowledge and just, where to find things, basically. So I went away, took 6 months and built the Elevate Her platform, which I then launched on my Instagram. And yeah, that's really how the journey began, to be honest. And it really started as a way of connecting people and, just really providing some support and some, useful links and things like that. But it's grown to so much more now, I'm really proud to say.
How has the organization evolved since the beginning and getting the platform launched?
Oh my goodness, it's evolved massively, to be honest. If you told me when I launched it, this is what would happen, I wouldn't have believed you. So I launched it on my Instagram, obviously just me. And now I work with 25 women, mostly volunteers or majority volunteers. And we're now a global organization. We have thousands of members in over 64 countries worldwide. We've hosted 37 events this year already in 5 different countries. We work with incredible partners like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, NATS, Cirrus, Technam, and that's been an incredibly exciting journey. We do a huge amount of educational outreach now and lots of research. I think the research has been the most interesting aspect for me, probably, across the board, to be honest. Where we're going with our research and how it's directing Elevate Her as a platform is incredibly exciting. So yeah, honestly, it's unrecognizable from what it launched as, and it's all due to what an amazing team we have, but also to the women who are our members. The success of Elevate Her is purely a reflection of how many women and girls want to be in this industry and want to stay in this industry as well.
Do you hear similar things from people that are approaching the organization that you were kind of thinking when you were looking for ways to get into aviation?
Yes, we do. There's certainly a few common themes. Again, I am kind of generalizing a little bit here, but particularly we find that with young women, confidence is one of the things that's brought up to us a lot. And I think that's why having a community and a support system is so incredibly important, because you need that group of people around you who's going to lift you up and be there for you when you do have hard days. And aviation is the most incredible industry to be involved in, but it can be really challenging. No matter what career path you go for, whether it's flying, whether it's engineering or ATC, it can be really hard. So we're all about building those communities in all over the world and ensuring people have that support system ready for them.
What advice do you have for people, anybody but young women in particular, looking to get into aviation? I have an interest. Maybe they've taken an aptitude test that says you would be a good pilot or something like that, and they don't really know where to start.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And to be honest, I actually have maybe 2 bits of advice. So my first bit of advice would be just give it a go, just try it, because there's nothing to be lost from trying something. If you try it and love it like I did, then fantastic. If you try it and you think, hey, maybe that's not for me, or maybe it informs your decision about maybe going down a different path in aviation. I think we always say about our research, all data is good data. So go out there, try it, and have fun with it as well. I think it's really important to have fun with your aviation journey. And the second piece of advice is one that I think about quite a lot, and some people may think it's a little bit funny to say, and I do mean it in the most positive way possible, but no one cares. No one cares apart from you. So you may as well go out there and try the things that you want to try and do the things that you want to do, because ultimately you're the only one it really matters to. So you should go out there and have fun with it, enjoy it, and just put yourself out there to try new things.
Elevate Her's been intimately involved with getting young women into aviation, but what about other organizations? What about airlines or flight schools or other aviation companies? Do you see them also being part of that outreach? You mentioned you have some airline partners, but generally speaking, is there more that can be done that you're not seeing, or is there a model to follow that you are seeing?
Yeah, again, a really good question. So I think the conversation now is certainly changing around women in aviation and, the need for diversity in the industry as a whole. So I think now is, the best it's ever been, to be honest. But let's look at the statistics. Globally, only 6% of pilots are women. This is still incredibly low. So yes, of course, there's more things we could be doing. And through our research at Elevate Her, we've really separated this into two separate issues. So one is getting girls into aviation, and that comes down to the outreach, the changing of perceptions, which social media, love or hate social media, but it's very useful for that, and those kind of aspects. And then secondly, and actually probably the biggest one, which I would say the industry as a whole really needs to work on, is the retention. So we've noticed that there is a bit of a leaky pipe in the industry. So even though now we have more girls getting into aviation than we ever have done historically, the number's not increasing, the percentage is not increasing. And I truly believe that this is through retention. So when we talk about retention, we talk about things like a really good maternity leave policy. We talk about having uniform that's specifically for women and fits correctly, and facilities that are for women. So even in the UK, we found through some of our research that out of a lot of aviation organisations in the UK, around 16% still don't have women's toilets. So for instance, I know it sounds like a bit of a small thing, but that obviously is a huge barrier to women staying in the industry. And we found similar statistics with uniforms. So over half of flight schools we found don't supply a women's uniform. And the same with PPE, life jackets, helmets, gloves. Very rarely we find ones that are specifically made for, the kind of female physique and that actually fit properly. And all of this contributes to, the message of you don't belong here, which is the message we want to change. And secondly, it stops women staying in the industry. So this is really what we're trying to get down to, because aviation as an industry does not compromise on safety at all. It's one of the things that we, pride ourselves on in an industry. So we need to stop compromising when it comes to women and women's safety coming into the industry too.
Do you see that beginning to change at all, or is it still something that awareness is key here?
I think awareness is still key here. I think we're at the beginning of this journey. I mean, certainly we're doing a lot of research, particularly into the equipment and facilities. And we've not seen any other kind of data surrounding this yet. So I do think we're at the beginning of the journey, but I do think the reception has been brilliant, certainly from all the organizations and, other kind of key stakeholders in the industry. Everyone is now very, very up for seeing the change and seeing where we can make a difference, because I do believe that there's small changes really that could make a huge difference to the whole industry.
That's fascinating to see that it seems like some low-hanging fruit here that would make a big impact.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with that, yeah.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you so much for building this platform, which we'll have a link in the show notes to Elevate Her Aviation so that you can take a look and get involved. If you run an aviation organization and you're thinking, oh, that would be good to have, maybe we can install a woman's toilet, and that would be good to have. I'm a little bit flabbergasted by that percentage that yes. Just doesn't exist.
No, I am using that one as a bit of a showstopper of a statistic. But yes, no, there's plenty more. And you're so right. It's low-hanging fruit. And, if there are any other organizations out there that would be like to see our research is available on our website as well. And we're always more than happy to have the discussion and, see where we can work together.
Catherine Maloney, thank you so much for joining us. Catherine is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation and a private pilot of both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. Catherine, absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
That's all for us on this episode. We'll be back next week with episode 352 of AvTalk, our first episode of the new year. Happy New Year! And happy tracking.